This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Today we have a very, very important show, as all of our shows are important. It's about how we change the world by servicing or supporting one of the most important communities in the world is the Latin-speaking or the Spanish-speaking world. And it's a I don't know what you call a race of people, but they're very near and dear to my heart, because we have Marcos, our yard guy, and he's the best guy in the whole world. And I see his workers, and they bust their butt in the middle of the summer. They don't quit. They keep going. White guys are gone, but the Mexican guys keep going. So there's a tremendous respect for the work ethic. But like most races, or it doesn't make a difference where you are in the world, we have no financial education. But it affects, especially in Arizona, is the Latino and Latina community the most. And every time I see the workers out there, my heart breaks, because they really don't have a prayer if they just keep being hardworking people who are the best people on earth. Any comments, Kim?
Yes. Well, one of the big initiatives of the Rich Dad Company is to bring the Rich Dad education, Rich Dad philosophy to the Latino market. And the Latino market is U.S., is South America, is Mexico, is Spain. So today we have with us a very dear friend who is working with us diligently round the clock to bring the Rich Dad to the Spanish world. And that is Fernando Gonzalez. So welcome to the show, Fernando.
Thank you very much, Kim. Thank you very much, Robert. It's an honor for me to be here in this radio show.
So, Fernando, where'd you learn to speak Spanish? I flunked on English, Spanish, Japanese, and French. I flunked everything. So how'd you learn Spanish?
Give us a little bit of your background, Fernando, before Rich Dad.
Yes, of course. 21 years ago, my wife, Ana Cecilia, gave me the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
But what did you do before?
Where you from?
Yeah, what did you do before Rich Dad?
Okay.
Give us your background.
Okay.
How'd you learn to speak Spanish?
Yes. Well, I am from Peru, and I was an officer in the Peruvian Navy. So I didn't know anything about money. And in my family, my father, my three brothers, we all worked for the government. So we didn't have any financial education. My biggest fear was to be poor, because I saw that when my father got retired, his income went from $2,000 to $150
per month.
Per month.
After how many years of
Pesos or dollars?
Dollars.
After how many years of service?
After 35 years of service.
35 years.
That's still going on today,
wow.
isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It's still going on today. And when my father passed away, my mother was 88 years old, and she started to receive $75 per month.
And she lives on $75 a month. So what happened to your mother?
Yeah.
So my mother received as her pension plan $75 per month.
$75. That's
$75.
what she had to live on.
Yes.
And so that's fairly common in Peru then.
Yes, in Latin America.
Latin America. The question is, what about medical?
Well, we have a system like Social Security, for medical, but it's a disaster. So if you have to go there, you are going to be dead.
Okay, so
You're going to be dead.
Let's say your mother's 88 years old. She's getting $75 a month. She's got to pay for food, shelter, this. And if she gets sick, what happens? I mean, I know you take care of your mother.
Yes.
Because that's not the story. The story is, what does she do if you weren't taking care of her?
She has to be in a public system, which is a disaster.
Medical system.
Medical system.
Have you been to one?
Yes.
What does it look like?
Oh, it's very poor. They don't have the physical conditions. They don't have the skills. The technology is really, really very basic.
So for somebody, let's say in your mother's situation, 88 years old, living on $75 a month, and possibly not well, what would happen to her?
Well, they are miserable, and then the death is coming soon. That happens to many
Die
people.
quicker.
Yes, because they don't have assistance.
So, I mean, the reason that's important, because Kim and I had the similar story, is the reason I have rich dad, poor dad, is my poor dad died poor because he took on the governor. You know, my father's a Democrat, and he shifted to the Republican Party because Democrats are crooks. You know, Hawaii, there's not one Republican in Hawaii today. I mean, even the Supreme Court justices were put on trial because Hawaii is so corrupt. And my father, being an honest man, he shifted from Democrat to Republican and ran against his boss. But in the process, he lost his pension. And so that's why a PhD was poor. That's why I call him poor dad, because he went to school at age 5, and then he becomes the head of education, gets his ass kicked, and then he finds out he's poor, but he has PhD. So that's why I make the joke, you know, PhD stands for poor, helpless, and desperate. It's not funny at another level because we have to take care of him. And Kim had a similar thing. She took on, what happened to your father?
My father, when he was in his early 50s, he was working, he'd worked many years for a printing company. He was head of sales for the printing company. And when the president was resigning, stepping down, it was either my dad, who was head of sales, was going to be president, or the chief financial officer, the accountant, was going to be president. And as often is the case, sales and accounting often do clash, and they clashed. So when push came to shove, the CFO got the presidency, and the CFO said to my dad, bye-bye, and he was fired.
But your dad remained a Democrat, unfortunately. No, it was really funny because her dad marched with Martin Luther King and all that. Very, very hardcore, good man. Her father's a fantastic man.
Yes.
High principles.
Yes.
But he belonged to the richest country club in Oregon, but he was the only Democrat.
Only because he wanted to be different. That was Dad.
I'd go
that
in
was
there.
Dad.
I say, Bill, keep your mouth shut because you're going to get killed in here. But I was support all this.
But to that point, I mean, that was a big wake up call for me when he got fired, because he had also taught me work hard, get a job, work your way up the corporate ladder, exactly what he did. And so when I saw that happen to him, I'm like, I'm not taking that path. I'm going a different path.
One more thing about, because not that you can vote for who you like, you know, I mean, but my dad shifted from Democrat to Republican. President Reagan shifted from Democrat to Republican, and Trump shifted from Democrat to Republican for the same reason, corruption. And it's just tragic. Not that the Republicans aren't corrupt, but they steal in a different way than the Democrats steal.
So back to Fernando.
So Fernando, how did you get to America from Peru?
Well, because I know when I got retired from the Navy, I had the entrepreneurial soul. And I know that in my country at that moment, we are talking about 1989. So at that moment, we have inflation, devaluation. It was a disaster. So there was not hope for me over there. So I decided to come to America to find my American dream, and I found it.
Yeah, but Peru was also under attack from Shining Path.
Yes.
Because I was in Peru at the time, climbing your mountains, looking for gold for Frank Query, another capitalist guy. But and Peru is a spectacular country. I mean, just spectacular. So I'm up in the mountains. You know, one gold mine was at 13,000 feet looking for gold, and the other gold mine was at 17,000 feet. But I learned so much about Peru and the people, but I think I learned the most when I went to your bank, because the banks were run by white guys, Spanish guys.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Banco Vice. And here's this white guy, Spanish, very handsome, could have been a politician, the John Kennedy look and all this stuff. And this guy was, we all know the game is played different on their side of the table. So when I met Fernando, it was about the same time, because I was in Peru in the 80s. 89, around 85, yeah. And so I understood when you said we have to teach the Spanish people. And so that's why we're here today, because, you know, Arizona is what they said. There was a book called A Day Without Mexicans in Arizona. The Arizona economy would stop because nobody else works here except the Mexicans here, right? I mean,
Yes.
they're the best people. So that's your mission, right?
Yes, that's my mission, to be the bridge between Latin America and financial education from Rich Dad Company.
And today you live in America.
Yes, I live in America for the past 27 years.
Where do you live now?
I live in Miami, north of Miami.
North of Miami.
And
A lot of Cubans there too, huh?
Oh, yeah.
They're all running from the same thing, right?
Yes.
They're running from Cuba. Castro. And you know what's funny? I don't know if you see it, but America's going socialist, right?
Yes, I saw it for the first time, and it reminds me of Latin America. What I see today in America, I never saw in my life before.
Yeah. And that's why, the Rich Dad brand, the Rich Dad message, and financial education, not that socialists are bad people, but they have murdered the most people all on planet Earth. I mean, Nazi is National Socialists, USSR is United States, Soviet Socialist Republic, China is Chinese CCP, Chinese Communist Party. They have murdered the most people in history. So when the capitalists go to war, like I went to war, it was against communism.
Yeah.
Because, I think Mao has killed, 46 million people that they can count. And Stalin killed 26 million and Hitler killed 18 million. So capitalists kill, but they generally kill socialists. But we don't have to go overseas now because they've landed in America.
unfortunately.
So the way we fight back is we're little cash flow games.
Yes. So I wanted to ask Fernando. So with Rich Dad and the Rich Dad Education, what happened with you and your family that led you to really want to take on this role of bringing financial education to the Latino market? What happened for you and Cecilia and Alexandra?
Well, what happened is that, for example, in my family, we never talk about money. So we didn't have money, okay? And after I started receiving my education, my financial education here in Phoenix, I saw a big opportunity for my family to step up, starting with my wife, Ana Cecilia.
She was a real estate agent.
She was a real estate agent until
She's forgiven me because I trash real estate agents and financial planners up one side and down the other.
Well, what did Robert say to Cecilia?
Well, Robert said to Cecilia, "What do you do for a living?" And she said, "I am a real estate agent." And Robert said, "So you work for tips?" and she was upset. Yeah.
Because I said to her, and she's the best person. One thing I love about Fernando and his family, they're tough as nails, man. You can pound on them and they fight back, But anyways, real estate agents work for tips because I said to her, I tip my waiters or waitresses 20%. I tip my real estate agent 6%. And what happened to Cecilia?
And she got very, very upset and said to me, "I don't want to get back here." Robert said that I work for tips, but she started to realize it.
Yes.
So what did she do? She went from real estate agent to
Now she's a big investor.
real estate
She's
investor.
a very successful investor.
Yeah.
And she said,
She's a
"I
capitalist
don't like
now.
tips anymore."
But she's a capitalist now.
Yeah.
Yes.
She uses other people's money.
Yes.
Yeah, she doesn't work for money. She uses other people's money. She goes for infinite returns.
Yeah.
And she's kicking butt in Miami, right?
Yeah. Yes.
I'm very proud of her. Very proud of you and your family. And
Thank you.
your daughter Alexandra here is running our social media site.
Yeah.
And it's been really a great story about the transformation. You guys being the bridge to the Spanish-speaking, the Latino community.
And what else is very cool is we run into people all over the world, and there's every once in a while somebody pops up and they're like, I want to bring this education to my community. I want to bring it to my people, basically. And so now we have people like Fernando, but not at the level. Fernando's taken it to a new level. I mean, Fernando has done events with us in Latin America where, thousands and thousands. You did the biggest rich woman event ever in Mexico City.
Thank you.
So you've taken it to a new level, and it's going to be exciting to bring the Rich Dad education to the Latino market.
So when we come back, we'll be talking more about how financial education can be bridged just by changing the language. So like I said, I flunked out of Japanese, I flunked out of Spanish, I flunked English, and I flunked French. But I'm now fluent in Spanish via my games and books. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. You can listen to the Rich Dad program anywhere, anytime on iTunes, iAndroid, and YouTube. And please leave us a review. And all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. We archive them for one reason. We don't sell anything. We do support education, not the stuff they teach you in school. But anyway, listen to this program again, and you'll learn twice as much. But he discusses with friends, family, or business associates, and they'll learn twice as much. But more importantly, if you have a friend, family member, or business associate who speaks Spanish, this is a very, very important program because you know what? They use money in Spain also. You see, money is a universal language, except there's no financial education in schools. So our guest today is Fernando Gonzalez. He's been with Rich Dad since the start. He was our first came. We started doing seminars. He's never left, and now he's taken myself and my team all over the world. The biggest events in Barcelona, Spain. That's where Spanish is spoken, Kim. And
thank you, Robert.
All over South America, except did we go to Brazil too?
No,
Yes.
because over there
we
is
went to Brazil.
Portuguese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Brazil, I got thrown off the stage there because what did I say? Something really stupid. But anyway,
Not you.
they speak Portuguese. They didn't understand me there either.
So Fernando is he's very dedicated to Rich Dad. He's very dedicated to the Latino communities of the world, and he has taken on the role of Rich Dad Latino, bringing the Rich Dad education and philosophy to South America, Mexico, Spain, to all the Spanish-speaking communities of the world, which is a huge task and one that is desperately needed at the Rich Dad Company.
So let's go to the human side. First of all, you live in Miami, right?
Yes.
And you know Cubans who escaped Cuba.
Yes.
Do they like communism and socialism?
They hate it.
What did they tell you?
Well, what they tell me is that their salary was between $10 to $20 per month. Number one. In Cuba, everybody, you can be a doctor, whatever, is $20 in Cuba.
I heard the same thing in China.
Yes.
Yes.
They all work for the same pay, except if you're close to the party.
Yes. And also what they told me is that they don't have any freedom. Everything is controlled by the government. So their spirit is killed because no matter what they do, they are going to receive $20 per month. So there is no free market. Everything is controlled by the government.
There's no incentive to do well because
So they escaped Cuba, which way they did it. But do they see the same thing happening in America today?
For the first time, they tell me that they see people like in Cuba, radicals going left, and they are scary because they say there is no other country to go. If USA goes down by radicals, where are we going?
that's what they saw in Cuba happen.
Yes, that's what they saw in Peru too.
And what's
Peru
happening
too.
in Venezuela today? Mr. Maduro is a real hero there, right?
In Venezuela, the people are making between $2 to $3 per month. Per month. It's a disaster. And they have a lot of oil, but there is a lot of corruption in Venezuela.
Venezuela is the biggest oil producer in the world. They're broke because of the government.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid that's where our government's going in America today.
Yeah.
You see it, right?
I see it.
Yeah, we can see it, but Americans can't see it because they didn't grow up in Cuba or Venezuela or Peru. Like in Peru, it was a shining path. I wasn't afraid, but I remember how depressed your country was. I was in Lima, driving the streets. Everything was dark. It wasn't a happy country. And Latins they like to ole, ole, ole and party, but they weren't happy there.
Yeah, it was a disaster.
Shining Path was blowing out all the towers and all this stuff and killing people. It's frightening. I don't think people know how frightening socialism is, but it's hitting us today.
And I forget who we were talking to recently on the Rich Dad Radio Show, but they talked about the countries where they were socialists and were communists and now they're more towards democracy, they have no desire to ever go back to socialism and communism. Unfortunately, the countries that are heading that way have never, to your point, have never ever experienced it, and they have no idea what's in store for them.
You see the same thing, Fernando?
The same thing, and they always say that they are coming for 4 years, and they stay for 50 years.
Yeah.
But what are they? So the point is, Americans don't know what you guys are running from.
No.
You know, just like you saying your father worked all those years, he's got no pension. Well, guess what? My generation of Americans, there's no pension for them. Because what America did, you know, for the last 40 years was they packaged these toxic assets and they stuffed them into our pension plans.
Yeah.
So that's why Ted Siddell and I wrote the book, Who Stole Our Pensions? You watch it, it's already happening. I saw it just this morning on TV. Was a thing called CMBSs, collateralized mortgage-backed securities. They packaged them up. These are the financing between the biggest hotels, the big shopping centers, and the big office buildings. They're defaulting. So the default is now at $40 billion, up from $20 billion 2 months ago. So those toxic CMBSs are sold to the teachers, firefighters, and police officer pensions. So it won't happen. It won't happen in America, sweetheart. It's already happening. This goes back to the point. If there's no financial education, you can't see how they're stealing or robbing you blind, right? But it took having you going to see your father working all these years, getting what, $150, then your mother gets $75.
Yes, sir.
And the medical system's trash.
Trash.
But that's where we're heading. So that's why. So that's what motivates Fernando. What I'm getting at is, why does Fernando want to put up working with me? But why do we want to bring financial education in Fernando's world to the Latin-speaking, the Spanish-speaking community? Am I correct there?
Yes, what I see also is that we as Latinos, we are hardworking people without financial education. So we work for money. We never knew how to build assets. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So we depend on the pension plan because there is no other choice.
Right.
So what is the change you see happening or that you want to see happening in the Latino communities?
Well, I really like when we travel together to Latin America, people started to change their lives, especially when we get back for the second chance. Sometimes we met people that are financially free because they apply the practical knowledge of financial education. So once we open the door, there is no way back because we want to be free.
So the argument we always hear is it can't be done here. And you're telling the Latino communities that it can be done in your neighborhood, in your city.
Yes, because they learn from the Robert, you and the advisors, how to build a team. Because we as Latinos, we used to have all the answers and the wrong answers. But once you have a team with real teachers, there is another dimension, is when you take your life to the next level.
Yeah, Fernando is just the best, man. He takes huge risks. He puts like 4,000 or 5,000 people in the room, but he flew our advisors with me because, you know, everybody knows I know nothing. But we had Kenny McElroy, we had Andy Tanner and his boys, Garrett Sutton and his children and all this. And I remember it was in Argentina. They speak Spanish there, right?
Yeah.
It was they had 4,000 people in there, and Andy Tanner's two boys, along with Kim, your wife, Cecilia, and Andy's two boys, and you guys were talking about infinite returns, right? Remember that,
That's
Kim?
correct. That's correct. And the two boys were explaining what an infinite return was. It was just, and the audience was just blown away because these boys they're 11 and 13 years old. So it was pretty fun.
Yeah, that you don't need money to make money.
Yeah.
And we had two women, myself and Cecilia, actually three women and Cecilia's friend, who were all real estate investors talking about infinite returns as well. So
And they were doing it in Miami.
yes,
Yeah.
They took an 8-plex and turned it in
took a fourplex
Yes.
and turned it into an 8-plex.
And you visited President Macri with Kim,
Yes.
and he told you that the problem is the educational system.
Yeah.
He cannot change the educational system. That's how they control our minds.
Right.
Correct. And the problem with education, and this is universal all over the world, most school teachers are communists, but they don't know it because they never studied economics.
Yeah.
You know, there's different kinds. There's Marxist economics, there's Keynesian economics, Malthus economics, and Mises economics. And then there's military economics. So the economics taught in our universities are Keynesian and Malthusian, which are Marxist, but they don't know it. I call it, to keep it simple, I just call Marxist economics Robin Hood. You take from the rich and you put it in your pocket. Well, that's what Biden's, Clinton, and Obama's do. That's why they're so rich. They made it the old-fashioned way. They run for political office and they steal it. Well, the Trumps don't have to steal it because they made it before they were there. So I still remember my father, my poor dad, years ago. He says, the thing I like about Kennedy is he's all very rich. He doesn't have to steal. And every politician, as you know, is there to line their pockets. They can say no, 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 no. But, a politician makes nothing. What do you expect them to do? But help themselves. God helps those who help themselves. So that's why, I really appreciate what Fernando Gonzalez, his whole family and the whole team and the dedication to all the cash flow clubs across the Spanish-speaking world. We can teach capitalism because you can choose. You can be a socialist. You can be a Marxist. You can steal from the rich if you want. You can tax them. But as you know, rich don't pay taxes anyway, right?
Yes.
So anyway, it's a completely different world. Anything else you want to say, Kim?
Well, I just want to say your website, Fernando, is richdadlatino.com.
Yes. And we can also announce that we are having a 3-day event in December 8, 9, and 10. Robert King and the advisors are going to be online for the whole Spanish community.
Okay, and go to Rich Dad Latino to find out more about that.
Yes.
December
8,
9,
9, and 10. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so thank you very much, Fernando.
Thank you, Robert King.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing Rich Dad education to the Latino markets all over the world.
It's an honor.
And Fernando taught me to speak Spanish. Hola, ¿cómo está? That's about all I know.
Roberto,
Cobertito. Anyway, thank you, Fernando.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Fernando.
Robert Serenki
For
King.
everybody listening out there, be very clear on this. I went to Vietnam to shoot communists. There's a reason we do that. It's because they killed the most people. And I'll be very clear on that because I'm very upset what's happening in our country. It doesn't make a difference who's Republican or Democrat. It's not the issue. It's our academic system is teaching people Marxism. So thank you, Fernando. And we'll be right back for a final word. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And I want to thank Fernando Gonzalez for he's been with us from day one. 25 years almost now, or 20 something years. But every time we had a seminar, he'd show up and all this, and then he finally stepped up and he says, I need to take this to the Spanish-speaking world. Any comments, Kim?
Well, what I'm so excited about is, our number one initiative at Rich Dad is to expand our cash flow club network all over the world. We have thousands of cash flow clubs where people get together spontaneously and they play the cash flow game. It might be 6 people, it might be thousands of people. And so Fernando is spearheading the Latino market in expanding the cash flow club network there, which is very exciting. And we're just launching now our updated cash flow game, which I'm so excited about.
It's much prettier.
It's very pretty. It's very exciting. And we are in the process of translating all of the nuances into Spanish so that Fernando will have that game available for his communities.
But can I say something else? There was, there was another, he was from Mexico. Is Marco Real, and he's a huge television star in America. And he came to us immediately when we started out, just like Fernando. And it is because they love their people, and the people are hurting. Like I said, every time I look at the workers in our yard, I just wish I could transfer knowledge, but I can't do it. I don't speak Spanish, but anyway, and they're green carded. But if they played the game, the game would transfer the knowledge. And so by having it in Spanish and then having Fernando start this whole network across the Latin-speaking world, Spanish-speaking world, it supports our mission, which is to elevate the financial well-being of humanity, not just Americans. But I'll tell you something that Marco said to me. This is 20 years ago. And he was always he was going out for The Price is Right and all that. He's kind of like that other guy. He's on TV now a lot. Very handsome Spanish Latin guy. I said, "What drives you?" And he says, "You know what pisses me off?" I said, "No, what is it?" He says, "When people think of Mexicans, because he's Mexican, they think of this guy leaning up against a cactus with a sombrero over his head." He says, "That drives me." He says, "How dare they? That is so stereotyping us. And we're very hardworking people." And I would agree 100%. Any comments, Kim?
It's been my experience every time we've been to Mexico. It's our experience in Latin America. The people are driven. They're also so eager to learn and to improve their lives and make a difference. So, yeah.
So the cash flow game in Spanish will transfer the knowledge my rich dad gave me years ago, and we can now transfer it to the Latin-speaking world.
And the game can go throughout the Latino world to where Robert and I could never get to. So that's very exciting.
It would take me a while to learn to speak Spanish. So anyway, thank you all for listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show.
Thank you, Fernando Gonzalez.
Thank you very much.
And thank you all for listening.